Good morning, I'm Brigid, and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. This is the 27th of May, and it is Memorial Day here in the United States. So that means that it is a holiday for everybody. I think in the UK they would call it a bank holiday. And so everybody is probably going to be home today. I don't have things like, good morning, Sam. We don't have anything like postal delivery today. We don't have, rubbish pickup or anything like that. Excuse me. So today, like, all my neighbors are going to be home and everything. And it's been another rather interesting night because my neighbor has a motion light, and he's away right now. And his motion light comes on like every 2 minutes now. And of course, the only place it actually shines is in the window of my house. So I actually had to get up in the night and cover up my windows because I was just so bothered by this light that was coming in. I was like, oh my God. It's still doing it. I don't know. I'm going to have to say something to him about it when he comes back and be like, hey, but I think he just has left it on because he's away and he figures, if anybody comes near the house, the light will go on, that's probably why he has it. But, it was, that's like it's a new thing that hasn't happened before. And I wonder if it's kind of something from the power outage might have affected the way that works. Because now it never did it before, and now it seems like it's doing it all the time. So, I don't know. Anyway, it just adds another little bit of interest to the days here. And so this morning, on the plus side of everything, I've certainly been trying to do my integrated Amrita meditation every morning, and that's the one that I had told people about a couple live streams ago. I said the best meditation I've ever done is Mata Amritanandamayi's I Am meditation. And I posted a link on on Transition Life Coaching to people who want to actually take the class. I'm not authorized to teach it because it is one of those classes that always has to be taught for free. The only time they charge for that class in person is if they have to charge for space rental or something. If they're gonna provide food or a space rental or something, then they will charge people for that, but not for the meditation itself, because that is something everybody does volunteer. And most people now can just simply get a IM class with the experts in the California ashram on Zoom. So it's very easy to get a class in this, but the longer meditation is usually an all-day class. Anyway, I go through long periods of time where I don't do that meditation because it's time consuming. And if I wake up and I feel like depending on my state of mind, or if I'm very hungry, because you're not supposed to eat before that meditation, you don't drink before that meditation, and you don't eat or drink 10 minutes after that meditation, and you don't speak for 10 minutes after that meditation. Because it's an energetic type of meditation that actually does have an effect on your Shakti. So but it has a very good effect. I mean, because it's being taught by somebody who is an actual master of that, it's a very safe meditation. It's not. I've always been wary of people who go and like you can go on YouTube and say, Kundalini activation meditation, or I will hear about people. Usually Westerners who will say like, I'm going to give a class and activate your Kundalini. And I'm like, you really should not be doing that. I just feel very, very strongly about that. And most of the time when I do hear about people going to classes like that, I don't think they're really doing a Kundalini activation. What they're probably doing is they may be, and one would hope that all they're doing is maybe aligning chakras or waking them up or something like that. But actually doing an activation really should be, to me, if a person from India is not doing it, because that's the culture and the background it comes out of, I tend to be dubious unless I know that person has studied under somebody who has a lineage, because it's just really, in a way, it would be like kind of getting a guy who like I read something on the internet once about doing electricity, and now I'll rewire your house. That's kind of my feeling about it. I always feel like people need to be really careful when dealing with the Shakti energy, with the Kundalini energy, because it's extremely powerful, and if it's not managed in the right way, it can cause mental illness, it can cause paralysis, it can cause depression, it can create all other kinds of physical problems if it's not channeled in the right way. So that's why I always recommend this meditation. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. It's online. Nobody has to go anywhere necessarily. I mean, there are in-person meditations that you can get. My voice is really froggy this morning. So apologies for that. But it's, yeah, so it's, so that's the one I always recommend, because I know that it's one that is safe and that it comes from a legitimate source. And people do ask me that question a lot. I do get emailed a lot about, who teaches something that's legit. And I said, well, I know that this is legit. And if it's done every day, it actually can have a profound effect, not only on your mental state, but on your DNA as well. So I always, now I'm back into doing this meditation every day, and it's made a huge difference. I was laughing because yesterday I went to a picnic at my sister's house, and she has these two dogs. She has Francis and she has Boo. And they're both mixed breeds that she had rescued when she was living in California. And Francis is this little fur ball with her tongue hanging out because she's missing a couple of front teeth, and she's just this little ball of energy, and she's adorable. She always wants to be in your lap. She's just cute. Boo, on the other hand, looks like a dachshund, but is actually some kind of combination of a Mexican hairless and Chihuahua. Well, is she Chihuahua? I don't know. She's got the dachshund kind of ears, like the beagle ears, but she's some other kind of a weird mix. So she almost looks like a dachshund, but with some shaggy fur at the bottom. Very cute dog, but scared to death of everybody, which is why she's called Boo. Except my sister. She loves my sister and follows her around. Doesn't like her husband, even though my brother-in-law is not he's not an angry or menacing kind of a guy. And she doesn't like any. She didn't like me coming in. She didn't like anybody coming in the house. You get up in my sister's house. You went to the back, the dog would start barking at you, like you were a threat or something. And my sister would have to be like, stop that, But yesterday we were out, because this is now that I've gotten back into doing this. We were all sitting in the backyard. She had a gazebo. We were out having a picnic, and Boo sits under my sister's chair. And so, but then I was sitting there just next to my sister, and all of a sudden I keep feeling this nose on me, and I look over, and Boo is over. She's sticking her head on my hand, and she's sticking her hand against my nose, and she's just looking at me. And I was like, wow, it's almost like there's something energetic. But what I kind of got in my head was there's something energetic about you that she doesn't feel threatened by. So she's now she's feeling like, but I mean, I've known this dog for 15 years. This dog, it's only now this dog is sitting there, looking at me in this way. So anyway, so that was just interesting. And I don't know why, but I felt like doing IM does create a kind of an energetic shift, and it does seem to change, not just the way animals, but the way people approach you as well. So I don't know. Anyway, that's probably my plug for IM. I'm not necessarily trying to sell people on doing it if people have their own methods and things, but I just find it's a really effective one. But in connection with that, the thing I wanted to really talk about today was the idea of silence, okay, and the importance of silence, because it's one of those things that we think about, but it's not something we're particularly good with culturally. When we are, because as I was mentioning with this meditation that I do, at the very end of it, there's 10 minutes of silence. And that 10 minutes of silence is critical. I find that when I'm going through that 10 minutes of silence, I would rather continue that silence. I would rather not. I wait as long as possible to actually start talking again, because there's something about being in a silent space, especially after you've meditated, that really allows you to, I guess, to really hear the body, to really hear what's around you, or really just to be present. There's something about silence where you are not trying to create a kind of distraction with a lot of words, with music, with the TV. I grew up in a household where my mom had the TV on all the time. Now, when I grew up, I watched a lot of TV. I mean, I think probably up until about, probably even through my teenage years, although once we got MTV in the early 1980s, I watched that constantly. Of course, that was the original MTV. And then probably after 1989, I stopped. I stopped watching TV, probably around the time reality TV started to come in and become a thing. The only time I watched it was when I was married. If my husband would have the TV on, then I might watch it. But My mother, to this day, when I was a kid, there was no cable news. There was no CNN, or there was no 24-hour news feeds. Now you have these news channels where it's just 24-hour news all the time. And my mother is a news junkie, and so she would, I remember when I was a kid, she'd be ironing clothes, or she'd have the sewing machine out, and she'd have the TV on. And at that time, you had news. I think there was a morning news, like maybe a half an hour. And you had the 5 o'clock news. I don't know if there was one midday. Usually I was in school, so I don't remember that exactly. And then there would be a news at like 8 o'clock in the evening. 7:30, 8 o'clock, I think there was another news. And then there was news at 11. So these were each about like maybe there'd be an hour, there'd be a half an hour, and then there'd be the 11 o'clock news. And of course, that's what your parents sat up and watched. I mean, I was usually in bed by then. I remember that my father would watch the news at 7:30, and then the Muppet Show would be on. So I would sit next to him. He'd finish watching the news with Dan Rather, whoever was on, and then he'd be like, "All right," and he'd get up and leave, and I'd watch the Muppets until it was time to go to bed. So yeah, but the idea was that there only seems to be a TV on in the background. And once CNN came on, once we always had cable because my father had to have that stuff. And when we had the 24-hour news cycle, my mother, that's all that was on, unless I had a show I wanted to watch. That was on all the time. And so she would watch this, and she still watches it to this day. When I used to work in a town that was near where she lived, if there was like snow or something came up where I wasn't able to drive all the way back here to my house, I would stay overnight at her house. And one of the things that drove me mad was I would wake up in the morning, in my old bedroom up my upstairs, and I would try to sneak downstairs really early so that I could have like a nice quiet breakfast and make my coffee. My mother would have coffee. I'd just put the coffee on and I would do my thing. And then all of a sudden inevitably 5 minutes later, she's out of bed to get up. And she'll be like, "Oh, good morning." And then she immediately walks around and turns there were three TVs in her house. She turns every TV on and blasts it. And I'm trying to think. I think this was when my father was still alive, too. Now that my father's gone, I'm sure it's even worse. But she blasts every TV in the house, and it was always this. And this was during some rather, I don't want to get into politics on this feed, but it was rather politically tumultuous time, let's just say here. Not that it isn't now in a lot of ways, but but really all I was hearing was about all this stuff that was going on, that all it does is kind of ramp my anxiety up in the morning. I'm like, I don't want to hear about this. I want to just relax, enjoy, kind of like I do now. I want to be in my room. I want to relax. I want to enjoy nature. I want quiet. She couldn't stand that. She has to have, and I was just like, oh my God. So literally I was looking, I didn't have to be to work till 7 o'clock, it'd be 6. I'd be like, well, I gotta go to work now. I just had to get out of there. I couldn't tolerate all of this noise. And, oh, good morning. So I couldn't tolerate all of this, but she still does that. And I know my sister, when she lived at that house for a while during COVID, they had that the same thing drove her nuts. So the idea is that there's some people, and my mother being a prime example, who can't tolerate silence. In the same way that I think there's some people who can't tolerate doing anything alone. That's another thing I've often got from people, because I travel alone. I travel overseas by myself. I don't go with anybody usually. Occasionally I do, but for the most part, unless I was going someplace where I really felt unfamiliar or felt not knowing the language was a liability or something, in which case I probably would try to go with a group. For the most part, when I travel, again, especially in the UK and Ireland where I do speak the language, I just go. I book something, I turn up, I do whatever I'm going to do. And people have said to me, well, I don't understand how you do that. And I'm like, well, what's not to understand, really? You just go. And the more familiar you are, the more it's like a second home. You kind of know where you're going and what you're doing. But I've known people, like my sister was telling me she had friends who say well, I can't go to the grocery store by myself. I have to have somebody with me. I have to have my kids with me. I have to have my husband with me. I have to have my friends with me. I have to have somebody with me all the time. And it's interesting because one, because I always think of being silent as being connected to being alone. Because if there's somebody else with you, I mean, you could have another person in the house and they could be quiet. But it's very hard to have silence when somebody else is moving around. And to have total silence is something that we very rarely would experience. And in fact, my understanding of that is if you actually were to move into a space where all sound was kind of canceled out, there's something actually uncanny about it. That it actually can be a very disturbing space for people. Because there is some place, I can't remember if it was in a laboratory or if it was in it was some kind of or if it was in a museum or some kind of a place, but they have this one room that is literally completely soundproof. Like you go in and there is nothing. And that people said sitting in that room for any period of time is very unsettling. And it's interesting because there always has to be some kind of something that's going on. We always kind of have to be in the flow of what's going on. But then when we have anxiety and we have things where we have to calm down, or if we're going through certain changes and we just are feeling like we don't know where we're going or what's going on, really the first thing that probably should happen is that we would sit still and listen to what's going on in the body. Similarly, if you've been through some kind of major crisis or major change or something has gone on, then you sit there and you want to feel you want to feel what's going on with your body, because a lot of times if we get through a crisis, we go, oh, okay, that's over. And then we immediately get up and we move on and we keep going along as if nothing happened. Which sometimes, again, depending on the situation, if you do have people around you, if you have family, if you have kids, if you have stuff, then you kind of have to like, okay, we've got to get back to normal. We've got to keep moving and not make this, try to get, that's the way to ease the anxiety, is just to ease back into what's normal. But there's a real benefit in taking time to just be silent. And again, a lot of times that's what meditation wants you to do. And that's why a lot of times people don't do meditation, because they're like, well, I don't have time for that. Or I can't be silent. I'm busy. I have to get up. I have to worry about getting to work on time. I have to worry about this. And yeah, understood all of those things. But sometimes when you have certain things like, the power outage I had for a couple of days, where you have all your plans, all the things you're going to get up and do, and then you can't do them. And sometimes then you're just kind of left in a space where all of the things can't be done, and you're just there. And so what do you do with that space? What do you do with that time, right? And I know I've talked before about one of my colleagues who did a experiment with her class where she said to them, it was her honor students. She said, okay, you're going to go home tonight. You're gonna turn your phone off, put it away, leave the TV off, leave everything off, your computer off, everything, and just sit for 30 minutes doing nothing. Okay. Now she wasn't necessarily saying in silence, but it's not the noise and also the visual noise of the phone of different things. Just do nothing for 30 minutes and then write about it. And students protested. They did not want to do that. They were very annoyed at this assignment, which really isn't a very difficult assignment. It's not like there's a right answer to it. It's just you experience it and then you talk about it, right? And a lot of her students just refused flat out to do it. And then the ones who did it, she said, literally they wrote how it was the worst experience of their life. Oh my gosh, I had to sit here for half an hour and you couldn't play with your phone. You couldn't do this. You couldn't do that. We are so used to distraction. And the thing is, it's like, okay, so, but what's terrible about sitting in silence? I mean, okay, we have a restlessness, first of all. There's a restlessness. We don't know how to be still. So we're very, very restless. And then it's like, okay, I'm not doing something, but now I need something else. I'm high energy, so now I need something else to keep that moving or to occupy that space. Or I'm going to fall asleep, or I'm going to this or that. And so we don't do well in spaces where there's quiet, because that's just not how we normally function. We never function in total silence. There always seems to be something. Like when I do these live streams, I usually have to close my window because the bird noises would be really loud, but also the noise of the highway that's nearby. You would hear the cars and so forth, and sometimes trucks. One of the things I always loved about wintertime, sometimes when we have a big snowstorm, like a blizzard, everything is quiet. And snowfall is quiet. It's not like rain that makes a lot of noise. And it was, of course, raining this morning, too. But it's noisy. I've gotten used to silence. And part of that for me might be because I've really lived alone since, when did I move out with my husband? 2001? So I've lived, I've had, I have friends, I go see people, I have family, and, it's not like I'm alone, but in my house, I'm by myself. So I'm used to being by myself and not having that distraction of things. And so, I don't know, I like being alone. I'm used to being alone. I like being with people too, but I think that's the harder thing to do, is to learn how to be alone. Now, what silence really does for you, that I find, meditatively especially, is that it allows you to hear your body. If you ever sat down to meditate at any point, if somebody said to you, okay, sit down and empty your mind, and you sit down to try to do it. So what happens to you? The first thing is you start doing this. You start moving around. You start doing this. You start to itch. And you start to feel, and then, oh, this is bothering me. That's bothering me. You immediately start feeling everything in your body that annoys you, so you don't sit still. A lot of times they will tell you, you need to sit still, but you can't. You're just like, that, you're itching this, and that happens. So and your mind is not. Your mind doesn't want to be quiet. Your mind is still going on about things all the time. And so really, it's, again, just sort of like being alone. It's something that you almost have to get used to. It's like, it's like easing your way into the water. You start in the shallow end and then you work your way into the deep end. It's something that that is worth taking some time to do, because when we have a lot of anxiety, especially anxiety that doesn't seem to have a real source to it, like it's not necessarily that something, we might have had some inconveniences or some annoyances during the day, but we may find ourselves more irritable or more rattled than usual about certain things. And when we have that level of irritability, sometimes there can be a physical cause. Like, for instance, if I haven't eaten, then I can be irritable. Or just certain things that can drive us crazy. But sometimes we try to go to bed and we can't sleep. There's something going on, even if there's no specific crisis. The body is still always running in crisis mode a lot of the time for us. For whatever we have gone through, because we are in the habit of just picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves off, and moving on, our minds may have said, okay, I've moved on. That was something. Now let's move on. But the body has not recovered from it yet. What sitting in silence does is it allows you to listen to the body, and it allows you to see areas where, and watching the thoughts that pop into your head and so forth. It's not about suppressing your thoughts initially. Actually, it's never about suppressing your thoughts. But what you find after a while is if you pick a spot and look at it, and I mean a blank spot, not a spot with something you can stare at and analyze, like a blank wall. If you stare at it for, say, 2 minutes, and you just allow it to be almost like a projection screen for your thoughts, eventually you will find that your thoughts will stop. And I think I talked about this yesterday. And that's the point at which you can quiet things enough that you know what's going on within you. That's really what the benefit is there. There's other benefits too. I know people have done studies about how doing meditation, how good it is for your body. It's good for your DNA. It's good for, it actually can change your DNA. Just as being stressed out can also change your DNA. And it's just something that when you do it, when you allow yourself to have that period of silence, it allows the body to be heard. And that's what I think is very important about it. There's not really a goal to meditation, and anybody who practices regularly will tell you that meditation doesn't have a goal. It's not like, oh, I'm going to meditate X number of times and I'm going to be peaceful after that. Like, you're not necessarily going to be peaceful, but you have to see where you're unsettled. You want to see where the wounds are. You want to see what still needs to be healed. A lot of times we will talk very abstractly about healing, but we don't know what needs to be healed. Or if somebody says, well, you need to let go of the past, or well, you need to do this or that, and you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, it doesn't really mean anything unless we can feel it. Just like I've talked about, again, intellect versus experience. Your mind can think about a whole bunch of stuff, And certainly in a period of silence, your mind might do that. You might sit down and you might find yourself thinking about a lot of stuff. But it's also good to just think about nothing. I mean, we don't, experiencing has to do with connecting with it in the body, not in the mind. Okay, or not in addition to the mind, let's just say. The only time you really believe something and accept something and are actually able to transform is when it's accepted in the body. So silence is something that I find you can't be underrated in terms of its value. So people who don't like silence or who are not good with it, like I said, I always recommend starting small, doing that. Like just staring at a wall, just thinking, just even if it just starts for 30 seconds, okay? Like set a timer or something, 30 seconds. And then just try to be silent. And then usually like 2 minutes is a good general time period to start. And then just see, and again, it's not like you're trying to silence all your thoughts because now you're just trying to repress everything. You just watch them go in front of you. Whatever you're thinking about, thinking about, okay, after this, I have to get in the car and go here, here, and here. Whatever you're thinking about, just let it go. But don't attach yourself to it. Don't jump into the analysis of it. Just like, okay, that's a thought. That's in my head. And eventually you can start to do it for longer and longer periods of time. Now, I don't think it's necessary for people to sit there and be silent like for an hour a day or something like that. I mean, and to me, whenever I hear people say like, oh, well, I can sit, I'm like, that to me just sounds like, okay, well, that doesn't make you a holy or enlightened person. Okay. It just means that, I mean, it's good that if you really can do that, but you find that the more that you do that, the more that when we talk about grounding, the more that you're able to actually do it, because you're allowing the body to be heard and you're able to respond to the body in the proper way. So anyway, just some thoughts on that because a lot of times that's the only way that you can come into an awareness of what is really going on there. And physical symptoms and things that we have may have a lot, yes, they may have to do with physical things going on with us, but they also may have to do with psychological or environmental things that are going on as well. And you find, again, after a while, especially people who want to develop intuition and so forth, having periods of silence like allows you to open up a space for that. It allows you to clear out some of the clutter that always goes on in the mind every day, or at least being able to detach from it if you're not able to get rid of it. So anyway, that was my thought of the morning here. Let me do our reading for the day and see what comes up. Interesting. Oh, I knew this card was going to come up, and you're just not going to believe it. Silence. Silence card came up. Who would have thunk, right? And that's the outcome card. So let's begin at the beginning here. Our first card is, again, this is actually the Chariot card. This is the card of awareness. Okay, and you see there's a shadow of a person here. And that in the middle, there's a person. It's like it's burning, like this blue flame that's burning it away. And there is a much clearer picture of somebody in the midst of this kind of shadowy being. So the idea is coming into awareness of, I guess what people, again, I don't always necessarily want to talk in terms of internal and external, because I think both are connected more intimately. I think we like to separate them, saying, well, this is my internal life and that's my external life. I think they're more connected than we perceive anyway. But there is this awareness that you come into of the body, again, having that clarity there of what is going on. And the internal feeling of which we are often unaware is this is guilt card again. This is the Eight of Swords. And really even more than guilt, guilt may be part of it. It may be that sometimes we don't want to be silent because we don't want to cogitate on past things that we have in shadow. A lot of times you'll do that if you have too much time to sit. You can start thinking about things like, oh my God, that thing happened 10 years ago and I was so embarrassed. Like that may be another reason that people don't want to spend too much time thinking, especially or trying to be silent, because they don't want all the stuff that the noise drowns out to come in. So sometimes that is really what the thing is. And the Eight of Swords really is about tying yourself up in mental knots. And we are generally unaware of it. I mean, you don't have to be thinking at 100 miles an hour all the time to be tied up in mental knots. You still can end up being stuck in a certain thought or a thought pattern without necessarily always being consciously aware of it. And the external feeling of which we are aware is the transformation card. This is actually the death card in this one. I think this is a beautiful example because it's the idea of, you are... A lot of people right now are in the midst of a transformation. There's things that are changing in our lives. We may find that there are certain events and things, whether they're connected to the astrology, because like I said, April was an incredibly active astrological month. We had 2 eclipses, we had solar storms, we've had, and May too, really, for that. We had a comet that came in. We had all these kinds of bizarre, rare celestial phenomenon that were affecting a lot of different areas. And whether that's really the cause or not, I mean, is anybody's guess, but certainly there has been, I'm hearing, like I said, clients, friends, what I'm even seeing out just in social media and on the internet, is that a lot of people just seem to be kind of slammed and experiencing a lot of this change right now. Like there is a lot of sudden and abrupt change. So this is a period of transformation for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are in transition and are trying to move from one state to another. But again, when we get ourselves stuck here, the transformation can be very, very difficult. And it can be, as my friend put it last night, it could be growing pains. It could be, there's just, we sometimes know that there's growth going on, but we really wish it would just hurry up and get on with it because we're tired of feeling a certain way. Okay, the advice card is this Five of Pentacles. It's the outsider. Okay, so this is the little child looking in at this there seems to be this wondrous rainbow behind there, but he's locked out of it. Okay, and this is the Five of Pentacles. This is a card of scarcity, and it's also often a card that has to do with feeling ghosted a lot of the time by people. And the outsider is when we feel rejected, when we feel alone. And sometimes that is, in fact, the wound that we are covering up with a lot of noise and a lot of distraction, is the sense that if we are in that state of aloneness, that maybe we feel like we are isolated, that we actually really are alone, that we're not part of the group, that we're not accepted by other people, that we may go back to times when we've been victimized by other people. And the meaning of the outsider card is that's a script that we have. Could be from childhood, could be from past lives or concurrent lives, however you want to look at it. It could be whatever it is from. I mean, it's a script that is, it's a false one. We're never truly, totally alone. There is always someone, there's going to be someone somewhere who has our back. Even if it's not our family, it might be our friends. There's always, we're never as alone. And so it's really saying, stop acting like we need to stop thinking. I shouldn't say, well, we might act too, but also thinking that we are outsiders, that we are not accepted. I mean, yeah, there's going to be people who like what you do and who you are, and there's going to be people who don't. And, that's just part of the game that we play. There's going to be some people who are on the opposing team, and you participate in your own way. Don't say, and we all do this. We all have this thing of thinking, I'm not accepted by this person. I'm not accepted in this situation. Oh, that person's more accepted than I am. Yeah, we always do that to ourselves far more often than we tend to consciously think we do. And here's your outcome. Silence. Okay. This is actually the moon card in this deck. Okay. And this is the star. This is the star. And the star, interestingly, in traditional tarot, now we often talk about it as the card of possibility, right? But it's also the card of vulnerability. And I think that's very telling that they're referring to the star card as the silence card, because that's really the essence of it. When you're in that silent space, when the storm is over and now you're in this silent space, or if you're in the eye of the storm, wherever you are, when you're in this silent place, first of all, where there's silence, where there's void, there's possibility. Okay, it's pregnant with possibility. A lot of times we may allow things to rush, a lot of times these things will come rushing in at us, these things that make us feel this way. But we also have a tremendous amount of possibility. That's the space where creativity can speak. That's where things can happen for us, in that space of silence. but it's also a vulnerable space, because that is where healing takes place and where we recognize where that healing needs to take place. So yeah, interestingly, that comes up, and I always just think it's very, I mean, I always feel like it's almost validation of how tarot works. I've always said that tarot is not, it's not a fortune telling tool. It's more about, it's more connecting with the currents of what's going on psychologically. And I'm standing here talking about silence, and then I pull silence, right? You know, it's and that's what Jung would call a meaningful coincidence. It's like synchronicity, right? So this is, yeah, so we're looking at this in terms of, this idea, and the meaning of the silence card here is, if you read in the book itself, is there's nothing to do and nowhere to go except to be in the silence of who you are right now. So yeah, that seems to be a confirmation that this may be the way to identify places where we may be allowing past patterns to affect us. And with the Five of Pentacles, I only see this card and the Three of Swords as the two cards. I've often said that these are the two major issues that we deal with as human beings. Three of Swords is isolation or separation, and this has to do with scarcity, like being left out in the cold, feeling like you don't have enough. So one may be more about material security, and one may be, or maybe both of them to a certain degree, about being involved with the group or being able to be taken care of. They both have that feeling of, I'm alone, I'm on the edge, and I'm poor and I'm lost. Like there's that kind of a vibe to that. And really, it probably, if we thought about every single thing that has traumatized us, that we suffer with, that it can probably boil down to, in essence, one of those two things: feeling isolated, feeling rejected, or feeling scarcity of some kind. And I know certainly if you when you've had a lot of wounding from people, especially in relationships and so forth, when we are alone, we may busy ourselves a lot of the time just to kind of not pay attention to the fact that maybe there's not another person there. Sometimes that's what people will do initially, or when there's been a loss, if somebody has passed away or something has happened. Sometimes we will just fill that void in by saying, okay, well, I'm just gonna jump in and get back to normal. But people will tell you that you do need to take some time out. I used to go on, I don't really do this anymore, but I used to go on Catholic retreats, not because I really had any, not because that was really a system that I was practicing, but I could go and stay with these certain nuns, and it would be silent. It would be silent. It would be an entire weekend where nobody spoke. And to me, that was that was just that's like a thing. That's like a treat for me. It's like, oh, good, a whole weekend where nobody's talking to me. It's great. So yeah, there's something about getting used to silence and about getting used to aloneness as opposed to loneliness. Aloneness and loneliness are not the same thing. Because if you are centered and grounded in yourself, because ultimately, whatever goes on, whatever's happening is something that you have to respond to, and ultimately in the end, you're the one. I mean, there are people around to support you. That is the one thing. But the other is that you in and of yourself have the capability and the resources to do things. And a lot of times we believe that we're powerless for this reason. Oh, well, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have that. And we manage to convince ourselves of that. So yeah, interesting. The idea of sitting in silence. So that's what I have for you today. I do hope this was an interesting thing to think about at the very least. And hopefully the reading is something that might advise you in things that are happening within your day. I hope you have a great day, and I'm going to, as usual, this will be available here on Instagram, and I'm going to upload this to YouTube later. My tarot videos that I'm doing for the day, I've done 3 of them, and because of the power outage, I'm behind on them, so I'm going to do the other 3 today, and they'll probably be up by tonight. So tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, but they're going to be a little bit late this week. But I will have my tarot for Libra through Pisces coming out in a little bit. So I just want to thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.